Now that the Fox takeover by Disney has been finalized, Disney has updated some of their schedules for their up-and-coming films. They've got some new dates for some new Star Wars films, for some MCU films, for an Indiana Jones film, and for a whole pile of Avatar sequels. Before I get to that, there's an interesting advertising campaign going on for Detective Pikachu. Ryan Reynolds, the main star of the film, the guy who does the voice for Detective Pikachu, tweeted out a link to a YouTube video. The title of this video was "A Pokemon Detective Pikachu Full Movie." The video is 1 hour 40 long, and it has over 4.4 million views already. When you actually start playing it, you get the Warner Brother credits and you get the start of the film, and then after a few seconds, it cuts away to Detective Pikachu dancing, and that's what you get for 1 hour 40. So it is not the full film. It would be a very strange move to release the full film, but it's just Detective Pikachu dancing for 1 hour 40. So an interesting way to market the film, a little bit of a troll pulled onto everyone. I thought it was pretty funny. Maybe this will slightly increase their opening weekend. So back to the Disney release schedule, we've got 3 new Star Wars movie dates announced for December 2022, December 2024, and December 2026. No other details are known. Is this a trilogy that Rian Johnson is supposed to have been making? Is this a trilogy from the Game of Thrones guys? No other details actually known at this stage, other than there are 3 Star Wars films scheduled for those dates. There's a little bit of more information for the MCU Phase 4 plans. They've got 2 new MCU films scheduled for 2020, one on May the 1st and one on November the 6th. They've also got 3 more films scheduled for 2021 and for 2022. But it's not known what the specific films will be, but it probably won't be Guardians of the Galaxy 3 for 2020, and it probably won't be Captain Marvel 2 for 2020. There's also a release date for a new Indiana Jones movie. July the 9th, 2021 is where they're scheduling another Indiana Jones film. This one has Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford both on board. There's no mention on whether or not George Lucas will have anything to do with it. The New Mutants film has been pushed back from this year to April 3rd, 2020. So that film is still getting released in the movies at this stage. There was some speculation that it would not be released in the actual cinemas. It would go to some sort of streaming service, presumably Disney Plus at this stage. But that is not true. They're saying they're going to release it on April 3rd, 2020. And Disney has also announced the release of 4 new Avatar sequels. So they're going to be putting out an Avatar sequel every 2 years in December, starting from 2021. So the Decembers will alternate between an Avatar release and then a Star Wars release. So Decembers will be all tied up with these 2 big franchises. Now that Disney has merged with Fox or taken over Fox, a lot of the large films and a lot of large franchises are all under one banner. Here we have the top 30 films ever in the US domestic market, and I've circled in red all of the non-Fox and Disney releases. You can see here that there are only 10 films not released by Buena Vista or Fox, which are both owned by Disney now. So 20 of the top 30 films ever are actually owned by Disney now, and all of the franchises associated with them obviously are owned by Disney. So all of the sequels to these films, they will all be Disney releases, which allows Disney to space them out so they don't compete with each other. But it also means all of the other studios have to now slot their films in somehow between all of these big Disney releases. So things get a bit more difficult for a lot of the other studios now to try to find out what is the best film out of all of these big films to actually slot our films against. And lastly here, there's not much to update on the Avengers Endgame box office. It is slowing down by quite a lot in the Chinese market. It got $4.3 million on Tuesday, and it has a reported $3.3 million right now for the Wednesday in China. That hasn't finished yet, so it may go up by a little bit more, but that's pretty close to what it'll get on the Wednesday. So the money is slowing down quite a lot. That brings its total to $587 million in China, an absolute massive amount of money, but there's not that much more money to get for Endgame out of the Chinese market. In a lot of the foreign markets this weekend, the Pokemon film will be opening. This includes the Chinese market, so Pokemon will be the #1 film in the box office in China. It will displace Endgame from its #1 position, and the same thing will probably happen in quite a lot of the foreign markets. In the US domestic market, I think Endgame will get somewhere around $80 million at this stage. And I think the studio for Pokemon is predicting a $50 million weekend in the US, and there are some other predictions talking about $75 million. So the $75 million is not that far off 80, so it is possible that Pokemon will be the #1 film in the US domestic market, but I think it's safer to say that Endgame will probably still be the #1 film in the US domestic market over the upcoming weekend. On Wednesday, Endgame should cross the $650 million mark in the US domestic market. That will beat the Star Wars The Force Awakens record for fastest $650 million by 1 day. Star Wars The Force Awakens crossed the $650 million mark on the equivalent Thursday, whereas the Wednesday is where I think Endgame will get there. And as I stated in my previous video, I think both films will get to $700 million at the same time. So Star Wars The Force Awakens got over $700 million on the equivalent Saturday coming up for Endgame, and I think Endgame will also hit the $700 million mark on the Saturday. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.